Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Austin Campbell, and this is my Week 9 video presentation on the syndromes we've chosen. The syndrome I chose was Malpute syndrome, which is kind of a musculoskeletal disorder, or syndrome. And it is a rare congenital syndrome, meaning it's present from birth. The syndrome is characterized by facial clefting, usually of the lip or palate, a caudal appendage, which is essentially a human tail, growth abnormalities and deficiencies, developmental disabilities, which could also be mental disabilities, renal abnormalities, and abnormalities of the male genitalia. In order to diagnose the syndrome, the cleft facial structures usually have to be present, whether it's one of the lip or palate, and then at least one of the other diseases that I mentioned, or disorders, abnormalities that I mentioned, which would be whether it's the kidney problems, the caudal appendage, the problems with male genitalia, or the growth problems. At least one of those should be present. There are a lot of other similar syndromes to Malpute syndrome, but they're differentiated by the certain characteristics that are present. One such similar syndrome would be Pierre-Robin sequence, which also involves the cleft lip and palate. But its conditions and the diseases associated with it usually are only present in the craniofacial area of the afflicted person, such as obstructed airways or a displaced tongue. The other syndrome I wanted to talk about, the second syndrome I wanted to talk about, would be Stickler syndrome. That's another syndrome involving musculoskeletal abnormalities. It also has the cleft lip or palate. But this one usually, Stickler syndrome usually is characterized by a distinct facial appearance, as well as different abnormalities of the eyes and ears, and it can include vision loss and hearing loss as well. And then one third syndrome that I wanted to talk about was 22q11.2 deletion syndrome. This occurs when a small piece of chromosome 22 is deleted. Just like the others, this syndrome also includes the cleft lip or palate. That's one thing that kind of ties them all together. And it involves a number of other defects or abnormalities, just like Malpute and the other ones do. This 22q11.2 deletion usually manifests with problems in the immune system or breathing problems as well. So when those are grouped together, you can kind of point towards this syndrome versus Malpute or Stickler or, yeah. At this time, I want to talk about a few little diseases within Malpute syndrome and kind of dive into those. One would be the cleft lip or palate, which I've mentioned a couple times. That occurs at birth, where separation occurs and the bones were not formed completely during development. They were not fused completely or formed completely. And a cleft lip or palate is usually a good marker that there is a congenital defect present, or a congenital syndrome as a whole is more present, because children born with a cleft lip or palate are more likely to have a syndrome than those who are not born with a cleft lip or palate. Another disease I wanted to talk about was the urogenital kind of side of the Malpute syndrome. Urogenital diseases such as cryptorchidism are also present. Cryptorchidism is the absence of one or both of the testes from the scrotum, whether that is just it was not developed or it has ended up elsewhere. Can cause problems down the line for the afflicted person of this syndrome. And then the third disease I wanted to talk about with this syndrome would be just kind of the kidney renal abnormality side of it. One that's pretty common with Malpute syndrome is just renal angenesis, and that occurs where one or both of the kidneys fail to develop, and treatment for that involves possibly a transplant. You can live with just the one kidney, but your renal system as a whole, if you have Malpute syndrome, is probably not going to be functioning on all cylinders at all times. So those are 3 little diseases that can be present in Malpute syndrome, and help us to classify it and differentiate it from others. That'll mark my presentation. It's been a pleasure. Have a wonderful rest of your day.